The first night in my new apartment, I was ecstatic. I'd finally moved out, my own little slice of the city. The place was old, sure, with pipes that groaned and floors that creaked, but it had character. I spent the evening unpacking boxes, blasting music, feeling like the king of my own little castle. Exhausted, I finally fell into bed around midnight. That's when I first heard it. A faint scratching sound. At first I thought it was a mouse. Annoying, but not a big deal. I rolled over, pulled the pillow over my head, and eventually drifted off. The next night, it was back, but louder. Scratch, scrape, pause, scratch. It seemed to be coming from inside the wall right behind my bed. I got up and pressed my ear against the cold plaster. The sound stopped instantly. I waited. Nothing weird. I tapped on the wall. Still nothing. Convinced it was just the building settling, I went back to sleep, though it took a little longer this time. By the third night, I was on edge. The scratching started the second the lights went out. It wasn't random anymore. It had a rhythm. 3 quick scratches, a pause, then 3 more. Scratch, 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 pause. Scratch, dash, scratch, dash, scratch. It felt intentional. My heart started pounding. I turned on the light, and just like before, silence. This wasn't a mouse. Mice don't stop when you turn on a lamp. I started to feel a genuine sense of dread creep in. I slept on the couch that night, the living room lamp casting long, unsettling shadows. The next day I called my landlord. He was this old, gruff guy who seemed perpetually annoyed. I told him about the scratching, how it sounded like it was inside the wall. He just scoffed. It's an old building, kid. Pipes, rats, who knows? I'll put some traps in the basement. He clearly didn't believe me, or didn't care. I felt completely dismissed. That evening I came home armed with my own supplies. I bought a stethoscope, feeling a bit ridiculous, and a high-powered flashlight. I was going to figure this out. As dusk fell, I sat on my bed, waiting. The sun dipped below the skyline, and my apartment plunged into twilight. And right on cue, it began. Scratch, scratch, scratch. I grabbed the stethoscope, my hands trembling slightly, and pressed the cold metal disc against the wall. The sound was deafeningly clear now. It wasn't just scratching, it was deliberate, like fingernails dragging slowly, methodically, down a wooden surface. An image flashed in my mind, unwanted and terrifying, of someone trapped, trying to claw their way out. I yanked the stethoscope away, my breath catching in my throat. This was not normal. I spent the next hour pacing my small apartment, jumping at every creak and groan of the building. The rhythmic scratching from the bedroom wall was a constant, maddening companion. I tried to reason with myself. It had to be plumbing, or maybe tree branches scraping against the outside wall. I flung open the window and peered out into the darkness. There were no trees near my window, just a sheer brick wall dropping 4 stories to a grimy alley. My blood ran cold. There was nothing out there. The sound was coming from inside. Desperate, I started banging on the wall. "Hello, is someone there?" I yelled, feeling like an idiot. The scratching stopped. For a full minute there was absolute silence. My heart hammered against my ribs. Maybe I'd scared it away. Then, I heard a new sound. A soft muffled tapping coming from the exact spot I had just hit. Tap, tap, tap. It was a reply. Someone, or something, was on the other side, and it knew I was there. I backed away from the wall, stumbling over a stray box. I didn't sleep a wink that night. I sat on my couch, every light in the apartment blazing, watching the bedroom door as if a monster was about to burst through. The sun finally rose, and the first rays of light felt like a rescue. The scratching had stopped with the dawn. I knew then that I couldn't stay another night, but I also couldn't just leave. My curiosity, and a healthy dose of terror, was getting the better of me. What was in that wall? I went to the hardware store and came back with a hammer and a crowbar. My security deposit was the last thing on my mind. My landlord wasn't going to help, so I had to take matters into my own hands. I stood in front of the wall, the source of my week-long torment, and took a deep breath. I marked the spot where the sound was loudest. The first swing of the hammer felt final. Chunks of plaster flew, revealing the dark wooden lath beneath. I kept going, tearing away plaster and wood, the dust choking the air. The hole grew larger, and a strange, musty smell, like old paper in decay, wafted out. After about 20 minutes of frantic work, I had created a hole big enough to shine my flashlight into. I peered into the dark void between the walls. It was a narrow space, filled with dust and cobwebs. My light beam cut through the darkness, scanning the cavity, and then it landed on something tucked away in the corner, almost hidden by shadows. Was a small, leather-bound book, a diary. My hand shook as I reached in and pulled it out. It was old, the leather cracked and faded. I carefully opened it. The pages were filled with elegant, looping handwriting, dated nearly 80 years ago. It belonged to a woman named Alara. I sat on the floor, surrounded by the debris of my wall, and began to read. Alara wrote about her life in this very apartment. She was a musician, a cellist. She wrote about her love for music, and her love for a man who didn't love her back. As I read further, the entries grew darker. She felt trapped, isolated. Her lover had left her, and she described the profound silence of the apartment as a crushing weight. The last entry was chilling. It was short, written in a shaky, frantic hand. The silence is too loud. I must make my own music. If I cannot play, I will scratch out my symphony on the walls. A final performance for an empty room. They will hear me. Someday, someone will hear me. The scratching, it was her. It was the lingering echo of her despair. The rhythmic scratching was her final, desperate message, trapped in the memory of these walls. The tapping, dot was her responding to me. She wasn't trying to scare me. She was just trying to be heard. I closed the diary, a profound sadness washing over me. This wasn't a monster. It was a tragedy, a lonely soul reaching out from across the decades. I looked at the hole in my wall, at the dark space where she had spent her last moments. The scratching never returned. The silence was finally just silence. I eventually patched the wall, but I left the diary on my bookshelf. Sometimes, when the building creaks just right, I think of Alara. Her story is a part of the apartment now, a part of my story. And in a way, I think she finally found the audience she was looking for. Thanks for listening. I stayed frozen beside the wall, my ear pressed against the cold plaster. At first, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. When you wake up in the middle of the night, your brain isn't fully awake yet. Sometimes it mixes dreams with reality. But this wasn't that. Because I heard it again. A slow inhale, then a long, quiet exhale. Breathing, human breathing. Coming from inside my wall. My heart started pounding so loudly I thought whatever was inside the wall might hear it. I stepped back slowly. Every instinct in my body was telling me to leave the apartment right then. But another part of my mind kept searching for a logical explanation. Maybe the sound was traveling through pipes. Maybe it was coming from another apartment. Maybe then something interrupted that thought. 3 soft taps, tap tap from the other side of the wall. Testing the wall, I stood there staring at the wall for a long moment. The room was silent again. No scratching, no breathing, nothing. Finally, I stepped forward and knocked on the wall myself. Once, knock, the sound echoed strangely. It didn't sound solid. It sounded hollow, like knocking on a wooden door. That was strange, because the other walls in the apartment felt thick and heavy, but this one sounded empty. I knocked again, knock, knock. Then I waited. For a few seconds nothing happened. Then suddenly, knock, from the other side. My stomach dropped, because the sound matched mine perfectly. The closet, the wall I was knocking on separated my bedroom from the closet. So I slowly turned toward the closet doors. They were slightly open. I was sure I had closed them earlier, but now they stood open just enough to see darkness inside. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam of light cut through the darkness of the closet. Clothes hanging, shoes on the floor, boxes stacked in the corner. Nothing unusual. Still, something felt wrong. I stepped inside the closet. The floor creaked under my weight. The back wall was right in front of me. And when I shined the light directly at it, I noticed something strange. The paint was slightly different, a rectangle shape, like someone had patched that part of the wall at some point, and the edges of the paint weren't perfectly smooth, almost like a hidden panel. The hollow space, I reached out and pressed my hand against the wall. It moved just a little, but enough for me to feel it. Walls aren't supposed to move. My heart began racing again. I knocked on the wall, this time louder. Knock, knock, knock. The hollow echo was unmistakable. There was empty space behind it, a lot of empty space. And suddenly every strange thing that had happened in the past week started connecting in my mind. The missing food, the scratching noises, the breathing, the taps, answering my knocks. Something was inside that space, and it had been there the entire time. Denial, I stepped back out of the closet quickly. My brain was trying to reject the idea completely. No, I whispered to myself. That's impossible. There had to be another explanation. Maybe the wall was hollow because of pipes. Maybe it was an unused storage area. Maybe the building had maintenance access behind the walls. Yes, that had to be it. Old buildings sometimes have service corridors. That would explain the empty space. It would explain the sounds. Someone from maintenance could be moving around back there. That made sense, right? Except for one problem. The breathing. Maintenance workers don't hide in walls at 2 a.m. morning investigation. The next morning I tried to act normal, but the moment I woke up, the first thing I did was check the closet. Everything looked the same. Clothes hanging, shoes on the floor, boxes untouched, but something new caught my eye. Footprints, very faint, on the dust near the back wall. Bare footprints, human footprints. My throat went dry because they weren't mine. The landlord that afternoon, I decided to call the landlord. I tried to sound casual. "Hey," I said on the phone. "Quick question about the building." "Sure," he replied. "Are there any maintenance corridors inside the walls, like hidden spaces or service tunnels?" There was a pause. Then he said something that made the back of my neck go cold. "No," he said. "What do you mean?" I tried to explain. "The wall in my closet sounds hollow. I thought maybe there's some kind of maintenance space behind it." Another pause. Then he laughed. "Nope," he said. "These walls are solid plaster and wood framing. There's nothing back there." My stomach sank. "Are you sure?" "Positive," he replied. "Why?" I looked at the closet door while holding the phone. "Just curious," I said. The camera that night, I made a decision. If something really was happening in my apartment, I needed proof. So I took my old phone and set it up on a shelf in the bedroom, facing the closet. I started recording video. Then I turned off the lights and left the apartment. My plan was simple. If someone was really coming out of the wall when I wasn't home, the camera would capture it. I walked down the street and sat in a small cafe across the block. My hands were shaking slightly. Part of me hoped nothing would happen, because if something did, it meant the nightmare was real. An hour later, I returned. The apartment was silent, exactly the way I left it, but my heart was pounding as I picked up the phone. I sat on the couch, opened the video, and pressed play. At first, nothing happened. Just an empty room, a closed closet door. 30 minutes passed on the recording, still nothing. Then suddenly, the closet door moved. Just a little, then slowly, it began to open. The closet door, I leaned forward on the couch as the video played. The screen showed my bedroom exactly as I had left it. The bed, the lamp, the silent closet door. Then the door moved. At first it was so slight I almost missed it. A tiny shift, like the door was adjusting under its own weight. But then it moved again. Slowly the handle turned, and the door opened just a few inches. I remember holding my breath while watching the screen. My heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my throat. The room on the video was dark. The only light came from the small glow of the camera sensor, but it was enough. Enough to see something moving inside the closet. The hand at first, all I saw was darkness. Then something pale appeared in the crack of the door. A hand, a human hand. It wrapped around the edge of the closet door and slowly pushed it open. The fingers were long and thin. The skin looked pale, almost gray, like someone who hadn't seen sunlight in a very long time. My stomach twisted, because that hand wasn't reaching from the closet. It was reaching from behind the back wall, exactly where the hollow section was. The door opened wider, and then an arm appeared, slowly pulling the rest of the body forward. He comes out. The man crawled out of the wall, not from the closet itself, but from a small opening hidden behind the patched section of the wall. He moved slowly, carefully, like he had done this many times before. His body was thin, extremely thin. His clothes looked old and dirty, layers of worn fabric that didn't match. He pulled himself through the opening and stood up in my closet. For a moment he stayed perfectly still, listening like he was checking if anyone was home. My chest felt tight watching this, because that moment, he was standing inside my apartment, only a few feet from where I usually slept. Inside my home, the man stepped out of the closet. The camera caught his full body now. He looked taller than I expected, but extremely thin. His shoulders hunched forward. His hair was messy and uneven, like it had been cut with dull scissors. He walked slowly across my bedroom, every step cautious, every movement quiet. Then he disappeared from the camera view as he entered the hallway. But the audio kept recording, and that's when I heard it. The refrigerator door opening, plastic bags moving, drawers sliding. He was in my kitchen, eating my food, like it was normal, like he lived there. The routine for the next few minutes, I watched the recording in complete silence. The man moved through my apartment slowly, like someone who knew the layout perfectly. He opened cabinets. He drank directly from the milk carton. He ate bread straight from the bag. Then he walked into the living room, out of the camera's view. But I could still hear footsteps. Slow, soft, careful, and something about the way he moved made a horrible thought appear in my mind. This wasn't the first time he had done this. Not even close. This looked like a routine. Something he had probably done dozens of times before, maybe hundreds. He returns after about 10 minutes. The man returned to the bedroom. The camera picked him up again as he walked through the door. He stopped near the foot of the bed, and just stood there, not moving, not making any sound, just staring at the bed where I slept every night. My throat felt dry watching that moment, because I realized something terrifying. Sometimes I was asleep in that bed, while he was standing there watching me. The camera moment, then something happened that made my entire body go cold. The man slowly turned his head directly toward the camera. For a few seconds he just stared, his eyes fixed on the lens. I don't know if he understood what it was, or if he simply sensed something unusual, but he walked closer, one step at a time, until his face filled the screen. I leaned closer to the phone without even realizing it, trying to see his expression. His eyes looked dark, heavy circles underneath them. His skin looked unhealthy, almost gray in the dim light. Then slowly, his mouth began to move. The smile he smiled, but it wasn't a normal smile. It was too wide, too slow. Like someone trying to imitate a human expression, the smile stretched across his face as he stared into the camera. And then he whispered something. The audio was quiet, very quiet, but I could still hear it. 3 words, slowly, clearly, I know, you know. My heart skipped a beat, because that meant one thing. He knew the camera was there. He knew someone would watch this recording. He knew I would see it. Back into the wall after whispering those words, the man stayed still for a few seconds, just staring at the camera. Then he turned around calmly, walked back into the closet, and crouched down near the back wall. For a moment, the camera lost sight of him. Then I saw his hand pull something. A small wooden panel shifted open. A hidden opening in the wall. He crawled through it, his legs disappearing into the darkness, and then the panel closed behind him. The closet door slowly swung shut, leaving the room exactly the way it had been before, empty, silent, like nothing had happened. The realization, I sat on the couch, staring at the screen, unable to move, unable to think, because one terrifying realization kept repeating in my mind. That man had been living inside my walls, not just visiting, not just hiding for a moment, living there, sleeping there, watching me, and now, he knew that I knew. After watching the recording, I didn't move for a long time. The phone screen had gone dark, but the image of that man's face stayed in my mind, his pale skin, his empty eyes, and that smile, I know. You know, those words kept repeating in my head, which meant one thing. He knew someone had seen the recording, and that someone was me. That night, every sound in the apartment felt different. The refrigerator humming, the air moving through the vents, even the building creaking. Everything felt like a warning, because now I understood something I hadn't realized before. When I slept in that apartment, I wasn't alone. The first thing I did was check the front door, locked, deadbolt secure. Then I checked every window, all locked. But none of that made me feel better, because the man didn't come through the door. He didn't come through the windows, he came from the walls, which meant locking the apartment didn't matter at all. He was already inside. It took me almost an hour to gather the courage to approach the closet. I kept replaying the video in my head. Every movement he made, the way he opened the hidden panel, the way he disappeared into the wall. Eventually I grabbed a flashlight and walked toward the bedroom. Every step felt heavier, like my body didn't want me to go there, but I had to know. I slowly opened the closet door. The light from the flashlight cut through the darkness. Everything looked normal. Clothes hanging, shoes on the floor, boxes stacked against the wall. But I knew better now, because I had seen the video, and I knew exactly where to look. I moved the boxes out of the way. Then I pushed the clothes aside. The back wall was right in front of me now, the same patched section of plaster. But this time I examined it closely, and that's when I noticed something small. A thin line, barely visible, running along the edge of the patch. A seam, like a hidden door. My hands were shaking as I pressed against it. At first, nothing happened. Then suddenly the panel shifted slightly, a quiet wooden click, and the section of wall moved inward, just enough to reveal darkness behind it. My heart was pounding, because behind that panel was a hole, a space inside the wall. The moment the panel opened, something hit me. A smell strong, stale, like damp wood mixed with something sour. The kind of smell you find in places that haven't been opened in years. I stepped back instinctively, my stomach turning, but curiosity pulled me forward again. I shined the flashlight into the opening. At first, all I saw was darkness. Then the beam of light revealed something unexpected. A narrow tunnel, just wide enough for a person to crawl through. The tunnel ran along the inside of the wall, wooden beams on both sides, dust covering everything. But the dust wasn't untouched. There were marks, scratches, footprints. Someone had been moving through that space recently, a lot. The passage stretched deeper into the building, farther than my flashlight could reach, and suddenly I understood how he had been moving around the apartment. The walls weren't solid, they were hollow, connected by narrow spaces between the structure, enough room for someone thin enough to crawl through, enough room for someone to live there. As I moved the flashlight around the tunnel, something else appeared in the light. Objects, small piles of objects, At first I thought they were trash, but when I looked closer I realized something terrifying. I recognized a spoon from my kitchen, a lighter I lost 2 weeks ago, my missing headphones. My stomach dropped. He hadn't just been taking food, he had been taking things, collecting them, bringing them back into the walls, like trophies. Then the flashlight landed on something that made my skin crawl. A blanket, spread out inside the narrow space. Next to it was a thin pillow, dirty, flattened. This wasn't just a hiding place, it was a sleeping spot. That man was sleeping inside my walls. Only a few feet away from where I slept every night. Near the blanket was something else. A small notebook. I hesitated for a moment before reaching for it. My hand felt cold as I picked it up. The cover was worn and dirty. When I opened it, I expected random notes, maybe drawings, maybe nonsense. But what I saw instead made my heart stop. Pages filled with writing, neat writing, dates, times, and descriptions. Descriptions of me. One page read, Monday 11:42 p.m. He falls asleep quickly. Snores slightly. Another page, Wednesday 2:10 a.m. He woke up during the scratching. Must be quieter. Another entry said, Saturday 6:15 p.m. He bought pizza again. My hands started shaking because this notebook wasn't random. It was a journal. A record of my life. Someone had been documenting everything I did, every day, every night, from inside the walls. And then I heard it. Behind me. A sound. Very faint, but unmistakable. A slow movement. Inside the tunnel, from deeper in the walls, my flashlight shook as I pointed it into the darkness. The beam reached only a few feet ahead, but somewhere beyond that light, something moved. Then I heard breathing, slow, quiet, getting closer. The breathing in the dark, the sound inside the tunnel grew louder, slow breathing, coming from deeper within the walls. My entire body went cold. The flashlight in my hand trembled slightly as I aimed it down the narrow passage. The beam of light barely reached 10 feet. Beyond that, darkness swallowed everything, but I knew something was there. Something moving. Then I heard it. A soft scraping sound, like someone crawling, getting closer. My mind screamed the obvious truth. He was coming back. Frozen for a moment, I couldn't move. I was half inside the wall. The hidden panel opened behind me. If he came around the corner of that narrow passage, he would see me immediately. There was nowhere to hide, nowhere to run inside that cramped space. The breathing got closer. A slow inhale, then a long exhale. Exactly the same sound I had heard through the wall at night. My heart pounded so hard it felt painful. And suddenly one terrifying thought hit me. What if he had been behind me this entire time? Watching, waiting for me to enter the tunnel. Backing away slowly, very slowly, I began backing out of the tunnel. Every movement careful, every breath quiet. The flashlight beam shook as I stepped backward into the closet. The breathing inside the wall stopped for a second. Complete silence. Like whatever was in the tunnel had noticed something. Then suddenly, movement, fast movement, scraping, crawling, coming toward the opening. I slammed the wooden panel shut, hard. Then I shoved the boxes back against the wall as fast as I could. My hands were shaking violently. I stumbled out of the closet and into the bedroom, my heart racing like I had just escaped something deadly. Because maybe I had. Waiting, I stood in the bedroom staring at the closet door, every muscle in my body tense. Waiting, listening. Seconds passed, then a minute, then another. The apartment stayed silent. No scratching, no footsteps, nothing. But I knew he was there, inside the walls, only inches away. The closet door, then the closet door moved. Just slightly. The handle turned slowly. My chest tightened. The door opened a few inches. Darkness filled the gap. I didn't move, I didn't breathe. The door creaked open wider, then stopped. For a few seconds nothing happened. Then a pale hand appeared, gripping the edge of the door. Exactly like in the video. Face to face, the man stepped out of the closet slowly. His eyes scanned the room, looking for movement, looking for me. I stood near the bedroom door, frozen. Our eyes met instantly. For a moment neither of us moved. The man looked thinner in real life than he did in the recording. His hair hung unevenly over his face. His skin looked pale and sickly, like someone who hadn't seen sunlight in years. And then, he smiled, the same wide smile I saw in the video. The words, he tilted his head slightly, studying me, like I was the strange one. Then he spoke. His voice was dry, almost whispering. You opened it. I couldn't respond. My throat felt completely dry. He took one slow step toward me. I told you to stay quiet. Another step. You weren't supposed to see. My survival instinct finally kicked in. I ran, running. I sprinted out of the bedroom and into the hallway. My heart was pounding violently. Behind me I heard quick footsteps, much faster than I expected. He was chasing me. I reached the front door and grabbed the handle, unlocked it, pulled it open, then ran into the hallway of the building. I didn't stop running until I reached the stairs. Only then did I look back. The apartment door stood open, dark, silent, but he didn't come out. The terrifying realization, I stood there breathing heavily, trying to calm down. But then something hit me. Something far worse than the chase. He didn't follow me, not because he couldn't, but because he didn't need to. He lived in the walls, which meant he could move through the building without using doors, without using hallways. He could appear in any apartment, any room, at any time. And suddenly I realized something horrifying. I hadn't escaped him, I had only left the room. I stayed in the stairwell for almost 20 minutes. My heart was still racing. My hands were shaking so badly I had to grip the railing just to steady myself. Every part of me wanted to run. Run out of the building, run down the street, never come back. But another part of my mind kept replaying the same thought. All my things were still inside that apartment. My laptop, my clothes, my wallet, everything. And the door was still open. Eventually, I forced myself to walk back down the hallway. Slowly, carefully. The corridor was silent. Apartment 3B stood exactly where I left it. The door half open, dark inside. I stood there for a long moment, listening. Nothing. No footsteps, no breathing, no movement, just silence. I pushed the door open slowly. The apartment looked exactly the same. The kitchen, the couch, the hallway, everything was quiet. Too quiet. I stepped inside, every step cautious. My eyes scanning every corner. The bedroom door was still open. The closet inside was dark, but the man was gone. I knew I couldn't stay there anymore, even if he was gone now, even if he never came back. I could never sleep in that place again. But before I left, I needed to understand something. I needed to know how long this had been happening, so I grabbed the flashlight again and walked back to the closet. This time I opened the hidden panel completely. The smell from inside the wall hit me again. Damp wood, dust, something stale. I hesitated for a moment. Then I crawled inside the narrow passage. The space was even tighter than it looked before. The wooden beams pressed close on both sides. The floor creaked quietly under my weight. I followed the tunnel deeper, using the flashlight to guide the way, and after a few feet, the passage widened slightly, just enough for someone to sit. That's when I saw it. The man had built a small living space inside the wall. Old blankets stacked in a corner, plastic bottles filled with water, food wrappers, cans, and piles of random objects. But what caught my attention most were the notebooks, dozens of them, stacked neatly beside the makeshift bed. I picked one up, then another. Every page was filled with writing. Dates, times, observations, not just about me, about other people, previous tenants, names I didn't recognize, schedules, habits, notes about when they slept, when they left the apartment, when they argued, when they cried. My stomach turned, because it meant one thing. I wasn't the first person he had watched, not even close. I flipped through the notebooks quickly. Some of them were years old, 5 years, 7 years. One notebook had entries going back almost a decade, 10 years. That man had been living inside the walls of this building for 10 years, watching people, recording their lives, taking their food, sleeping just inches away from them, and most of them probably never knew. Then I opened the newest notebook, the one that had my name written on the first page. My hands felt cold as I flipped to the last entry. The handwriting was fresh, the ink still dark. The entry was written earlier that night. It said, "Tonight he opened the wall." Then below it, another sentence, written more slowly. "He is finally ready." My heart started pounding again, because that sentence didn't make sense. Ready for what? Then I heard something behind me. A soft movement. Inside the tunnel I froze. The flashlight beam shook slightly in my hand as I turned around. The passage behind me was dark, completely dark. Then I heard breathing, slow, quiet, very close. The flashlight flickered. For a split second the light dimmed, and in that moment, I saw him, crawling toward me in the tunnel, smiling, the same wide smile. His eyes locked onto mine, and he whispered the same words again. "I know, you know." The flashlight went out and the tunnel went completely dark. Police searched the walls of that building the next day. They found the notebooks, the tunnels, the hidden sleeping space, but they never found the man. And sometimes, late at night, people who live in that building still hear scratching inside the walls.